A man found an injured wolf in the woods and carried it for hours until he could reach a vet, but no one expected what would happen next. Dmitri lived in a quiet rural town in Alaska. He'd been born and raised there, spending a joyful childhood surrounded by nature. His mom and dad often took him out into the nearby forest, where they'd hike for hours. One of Dmitri's favorite things to do during those walks was to track wolves. As a kid, he could spend an entire day following paw prints just to catch a glimpse of one. To him, wolves were the most incredible animals he'd ever seen. As Dmitri got older, he didn't go to the woods with his parents as much, but his love for the forest never faded. At night, he'd often listen to wolves howling in the distance and smile, thinking about the adventures he had when he was younger. When he reached college age, Dmitri decided to leave town for school, hoping to land a solid job in the future. While at college, he met Elsie, a fellow student. The two quickly grew close, and it wasn't long before they were together. After graduation, they moved back to Dmitri's hometown. Not long after, they got married and had 2 sons, Jack and Thomas. One of Dmitri's favorite things to do with his boys was take them on walks through the same forest he had loved as a child. On one snowy winter day, Dmitri, Jack, now 12, and Thomas, who was 9, were walking through the woods, enjoying how peaceful the snow made everything feel. Then they heard something strange. It sounded like a howl, but the kind that was filled with pain. Dmitri told the boys to stay close behind as they slowly made their way toward the sound. When they reached a small clearing, all 3 of them froze. In the center stood a young wolf, not much more than an adolescent. But Dmitri immediately saw what was wrong. It had its paw caught in a hunter's trap. The poor thing was crying out in pain, and the sound hit Dmitri hard. He slowly stepped toward the wolf, but it growled when he got too close. Dmitri crouched down, spoke gently, and inched forward. After a few tense moments, he reached out and carefully ran his hand over the wolf's fur, softly telling it he was just trying to help. The wolf stopped growling, and to Dmitri's surprise, began gently licking his hand. It was like the animal somehow understood he meant no harm. Calming down, the wolf let Dmitri take a closer look at the trap. Thankfully, it was a basic clamp trap, the kind that snaps shut when stepped on. Still, there was visible damage to the paw, and Dmitri worried it might be broken. He told Jack and Thomas to stay back, then did something risky. He carefully pried the trap open and freed the wolf's foot. But instead of running off, the animal just stayed there, whimpering softly. Dmitri's heart sank. There was no way he could leave the young wolf behind in that condition. So, he did the only thing that made sense in the moment. He picked it up. Both Jack and Thomas stared in shock. Did their dad realize the wolf could easily hurt him? But Dmitri didn't seem worried. All he could think about was helping the injured creature. He told the boys they had to head home so they could get it to a vet. Surprisingly, the wolf stayed mostly calm in his arms as they started the long walk back. After hours of hiking through the snow, the 4 of them, Dmitri, Jack, Thomas, and the wolf, finally reached the edge of the woods. Dmitri made sure his boys got home safely, then quickly headed off to the nearest vet clinic. Completely worn out from carrying the heavy animal for so long, Dmitri was relieved when he finally laid it down in the vet's exam room. The vet looked a little nervous. After all, wolves weren't exactly the usual patient. But Dmitri gently urged him to check the paw, saying he was sure the animal needed help. The vet cautiously examined the injury while Dmitri stayed close, whispering calm, reassuring words to the wolf. His soft voice seemed to help. It didn't growl or struggle. After a careful look, the vet told Dmitri that the paw was badly bruised, but thankfully not broken. It would recover and could be released back into the wild soon. Still worried, Dmitri asked why the wolf hadn't moved when he first freed it. The vet explained it had probably been trapped for a few days. It was extremely weak from lack of food and water, but with some rest it should bounce back. Grateful, Dmitri thanked the vet and said he'd keep the wolf overnight to help it recover. Back home, he gently set up a spot in the garage with some food and a bowl of water. Even though the wolf hadn't shown aggression, Dmitri knew he still had to be careful, for his sake and his family's. When he walked through the door, Jack and Thomas immediately asked how the wolf was doing. Dmitri gave them a warm smile and told them it would be okay after some sleep. Before heading to bed, the boys peeked into the garage to get another look. They were both quietly amazed at how beautiful the creature was. By the next morning, the wolf already seemed a little stronger. Dmitri took that as a hopeful sign. It might be ready to return to the forest soon. The man and his 2 sons opened the garage and stood at a safe distance, watching as the young wolf stepped out slowly. She looked around, cautious but calm. Then, just before disappearing into the trees, she turned her head. For a brief moment, it felt like she was saying thank you to Dmitri. Over the next few days, the female wolf lingered nearby, always close to the edge of the forest near Dmitri's home. It seemed like she wasn't quite ready to leave, though Dmitri wasn't sure why. Then one day, she was gone. Jack and Thomas noticed right away, and they were worried. With their dad at work, they knew they weren't supposed to go into the woods alone. But concern for the wolf got the better of them. So, the 2 boys slipped into the forest by themselves. They walked for a while, calling softly, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. But the woods were quiet, and there was no sign of the wolf. Then, when they tried to head home, they realized they didn't know which way to go. Lost in the snowy forest, fear began to creep in. As the sky darkened and the cold settled in, Jack and Thomas sat on a fallen log, holding onto each other for warmth. Just as they were starting to give up hope, Jack spotted something, 2 glowing eyes peeking from between the trees. He froze. Was it a threat? Should they run? But as the figure stepped into the open, Jack realized who it was. The same young wolf his dad had rescued. He gently reached out his hand, letting the animal come closer. The wolf sniffed his hand, tail giving a small wag. Then she licked Jack's fingers and nudged both boys with her nose, urging them to get up. Slowly, she began to walk through the trees, pausing often to glance back and make sure the boys were following her. After about half an hour of walking, they saw a light up ahead. Moments later, they heard their mom and dad calling out for them. Overjoyed, Jack and Thomas ran into their parents' arms. Dmitri hugged them tightly, overwhelmed with relief. Then he looked toward the trees and saw her. The wolf was standing just at the forest's edge, watching them quietly. Dmitri's heart swelled. She had brought his sons home. He looked straight at her and softly said, "Thank you." The wolf gave a slow, almost knowing look, then turned and slipped back into the forest. Somehow, Dmitri knew that this was the last time they'd see her. But he would never forget what she had done. Such an incredible bond between a wild animal and a family. What an unforgettable moment. If this story touched you, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories like this one. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.